I'm Dan Norris, and here actively working on putting up a blog post while we speak is Sheeri. We're going to talk a little bit about the ACE program, but more importantly about just how to be kind of a good community member and ways to get involved. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, about us briefly, or about me anyway. For the purposes of this session, my official capacity as an Oracle ACE director is rather significant, in that I have some knowledge about the program as being a member of said program. I do maintain a relatively active blog at dannorris.com, and also participate in a lot of other user group, community events, and special interest groups, and so on. So you want to introduce?
I'm Sheeri Cabral. I'm not Mike, but now I am. I'm Sheeri Cabral. I am not an Oracle DBA, although I have been in the past. I'm actually a MySQL DBA. MySQL has a thriving user community, and in the past 2 years, I actually won the MySQL Community Advocate of the Year. And Dan is a very well-read, as well as very well-written blogger, and he contacted me after seeing the post. After I won the Community Award the second year in a row, I said, hey, MySQL folks, come on, you get lots of community. I don't want to be here for a third year in a row. I mean, it's great to win the Triple Crown and all, but come on, I'm not, So I listed everything that I did. I listed out, this many blog posts, this many presentations I made, this many presentations that I videoed that I put online for people to see, download for free, and just see if they missed the presentation or whatnot. Or if it was in the Boston user group and somebody's in San Francisco can't make it, they can now see it. So I put that up in a blog post, and Dan looked at the blog post and commented and said, this is a great post. I really want everyone in the Oracle community to see this, because not one thing on that list was I wrote a PLSQL procedure to do this. It was nothing technical. And even though I am a DBA and I can be technical when I need to be, a lot of it was, okay, my blog posts were on technical things, but anyone can contribute to the community. There's a niche for everyone. So Dan was very excited about it, and said we should somehow propagate this list to everyone in the Oracle community, so they can see that you too can be an Oracle ACE, because Dan, you were saying you mostly got it because of just blogging and commenting on other people's blogs. And so I said, well, why don't we do a presentation in Oracle? And Dan said, that's a great idea. So here we are. So I think that's about it for the introduction. And if anyone has any questions or comments at any time, raise your hand. This is all interactive. A lot of the material that we got from the presentation, Dan actually emailed out to a lot of Oracle ACEs and said, so how did you become an Oracle ACE? And we got a lot of responses back, and there's a few more Oracle ACEs in the room today. So it's all about collaboration and helping each other. So feel free to just stop us in the middle.
We should mention too that this, in case you didn't know, this was one of the sessions I think I had on the very first slide here. This is one of the suggested session winners. If you participated in that, thank you for voting for our session. This year, for the first time ever, Oracle had a kind of a contest and allowed anyone to suggest a session for presenting at OpenWorld. And so it just coincided with Sheeri's blog post, and she described all the things that went through my head, and I said, well, I'll just put this in as a suggestion. And so it was voted in. It was one of the top 25 sessions that were selected for presentation. So thank you for voting as well. And how cool is it that there's a MySQL DBA of the Year presenting at OpenWorld? I think it's just really phenomenal that Oracle. That maybe I just didn't tell them when we started, but that's okay. Now they know. So Sheeri mentioned, I know there's several of you that are Oracle ACEs in the room. Identify yourselves. Who are the Oracle ACEs in the room? Yeah. Well, the guy with the big red jacket, you can't miss that one, right? With the big ace on the back. So you'll see several folks around this week. I certainly encourage you to engage the ACEs that are here as you see them around the conference this week, and strike up a conversation. Okay, so I thought I'd start with just a little introduction about what the ACE program is about. And I know about as much as you do from reading the things that are online. As a participant in the program, as you're going to see during the rest of the presentation, a lot of the people who are a part of this program don't feel that they did anything extraordinary to be a part of the program, which makes it, to me, very unique. It's an identification of effort that's already been expended in many cases, and by people who are going to do this even if they didn't get identified or recognized for it. They'd keep doing it anyway. And it's really nice that Oracle has a way to recognize that and give some pat on the back and identify them to the community. So the biggest differences as far as the Oracle ACE and Oracle ACE Directors programs that I see, and from what you'll read online, that Justin Kestelman is the editor of OTN. Justin, the OTN group is the primary sponsor of the ACE program, so we have a lot of interaction with the Oracle TechNet site and the staff there. And Justin has an FAQ on his site that talks about the ACE program and the ACE Director program differences. And the basic differences that I've seen is that the ACE Directors are based on all of the criteria to become an Oracle ACE, which include community participation, blogging, answering questions on forums, just being a good community citizen for Oracle and helping evangelize the products, talking about the Oracle products. Most of the time in a positive light, helping people who have trouble finding a way to get the help that they need and giving them some of that direct help. Not necessarily in free consulting, but with the belief that if you give away the knowledge you have, that you'll get more knowledge from other people, which I found to be true in every case. And then the ACE Director also has some future obligations. So part of being an ACE Director is obligating yourself to a 12-month term of participation and engaging in conversations with Oracle staff on things like future product directions, beta testing, being actively engaged in evangelizing and blogging for the future.
So what Dan is saying is that your responsibility, right, this is the tough part, this is what you're committing to, is to talk to Oracle staff about new products that nobody else gets to do that. So I know it's a hard job and somebody has to do it. It seems more like a benefit than a responsibility to me, so I just want to put that in there.
Yeah, the beta tests are hard. The hardest part is not talking about the beta test. I think is really the biggest difficulty and challenge sometimes. What is next? I could tell you, but so there's some new announcements coming this week as well that are very exciting that you'll be hearing more about later in the week. So one of the benefits of the ACE Director program is that we do get to participate in product briefings that are exclusive to the ACE Directors. Yesterday, most of the ACE Directors attending Open World sat for about 6 or 7 hours and had a parade of product management and development, giving us insights on future directions and current product states, and let us ask those questions that we don't understand very well either. So this is a pretty basic explanation, but you'll find a lot more information on the OTN site if you're interested. There is a nomination process that's also documented there on how to join the ACE program if you're interested in becoming an ACE, which is kind of why I suppose some of you are here. I think I talked through most of this already. The other benefits of the ACE program is that you do get some speaking opportunities. There are some opportunities for beta program for the ACEs as well as ACE Directors. And I think for most people, the most important benefit that I've seen is that you get to be recognized. And as you'll see later, there's some intangible benefits of that as well. And being recognized as one of the people that is an expert and acknowledged by Oracle, kind of their stamp of approval, the little ACE logo that appears right next to your name all over the place on their websites. And the very posh clothing, yeah. So you get the very embarrassing red vest that you get to wear too. And then, as I mentioned, the ACE Director gets access to these product briefings and product management access as well, which is a very nice benefit for folks that are interested in new directions and what's coming down the pipe. It gives you a little bit of that crystal ball. And then there's some things that aren't really on the list that I think are pretty darn cool. So part of being an ACE Director is getting that recognition and people start asking you for what you think rather than you having to offer it up all the time, which is kind of a neat thing. You get some opportunities to be featured in articles, or some of you may have been at the keynote this morning, and my name was up in lights this morning on the big screen. So those are opportunities that come a little more easily when you've got that recognition already in your back pocket. There's a lot more networking opportunities, and for those that really it's not exclusive to the ACE program. Last night, one of the ACEs, Eddie Awad, organized a blogger meetup, and the blogger meetup was last night. So many ACEs are also bloggers, and that was a great opportunity to network with a lot of interesting and busy people around the world, which is a neat event. And like I mentioned, you get recognition for what you do anyway. You're already doing a lot of the things that will qualify you as an ace many times, and it's really nice to have somebody recognize that you did that, and that there's a program and a way to signify the importance of it. And you get the ability to help people. And ultimately, that's why most of the aces do what they do, I think, is that they enjoy helping and teaching and watching other people learn the things that they've learned.
So at this point in time, we wanted to have the people who aren't Oracle aces, or even those who are, just, think to yourselves for a minute about what qualities make a good leader. What do you think an Oracle, not just any Oracle ace, but just a leader in general, what qualities should they have, whether it's you as an Oracle ace or just, this nebulous Oracle ace and what you would strive to be?
In my field, I see these people that, coming to it with big idealist visions of becoming the new leader that will create a better world. They enjoy the goal, but not the process. But the reality of it is that the true work of improving things is in the little achievements of the day. And that's what you need to enjoy just as you feel. Well, for example, I was working for this organization that helped villages in Mexico. And their concerns was how to get the pencils sent to the kid in these little country schools. It was not about big revolutionary ideas, it was about pencils. I see the people that do the real work, and what's really sad is that the people that are the most giving, hardworking, capable of making this world better, usually don't have the ego and the mission to be a leader. They don't see any interest in superficial rewards. They don't care if their name ever appears in the press. They actually enjoy the process of helping others. They're in the moment.
It's so hard, to be in the moment, right?
So there's a lot to take away from that. A lot of that was you don't need to be a superstar, right? You don't need to develop the latest and greatest, new Oracle application that you then, give away for free. It's in the pencils. It's in figuring out the little things. Maybe it's a tip or trick that you don't even think is a big deal, but you share it in a blog post and everyone's like, wow, that's the greatest idea ever. I'm going to use it right now. The other thing was that you have to enjoy the process. If you don't love it, you're going to hate it. One of the very interesting pieces of feedback that we got from almost everybody that Dan got feedback from on his asking, hey, what's so great about being an Oracle ace and how did you do it, was that there was a little bit of almost trepidation of, well, you can't really give people a list of things to do and say this is going to make you an Oracle ace, because if you don't enjoy it, it's just going to be another chore for you. It's going to be another thing to do, and the best work that you do is going to be doing something that you enjoy. So it's kind of that, if you don't love it, you're going to hate it. It's almost hypocritical to do this session and say, well, how can you be it? I mean, you have to do what you love. Do what you love. As the old adage goes, do what you love, and the Oracle ace designation will follow. I think that's how it goes. So think about what you like doing. Maybe you like helping a coworker, a junior coworker, learn just the basics of Oracle. Write some blog posts about that. Sure, half the people, who use Oracle probably already know about most of the stuff you're talking about, but there are so many people who don't. So even if it's just basic information, I don't know a lot of basic information. I don't know how, best to structure queries so that the internal optimizer in Oracle works. I would love to hear about that because I'd love to compare how from what I know from the database system I use. There's plenty of knowledge that every single one of you has that you can share, and even though it might not be the world's most advanced technology, or you might think, well, they can just go and read the manual to find that out. Not everyone does that. So, make yourself useful in the ways that you enjoy doing, and you will find that you will get tons of rewards altruistically as well as, things like designations, and people will come to you. So, one of the pieces of feedback that I really enjoyed was from Glenn Schwartzberg, who said, I was unsure about what being an ace would entail, but luckily I found it took a little more time than what I was already doing. So again, it just kind of happened. You do what you enjoy, and of course we'll give a few more practical tips for some things that might earn you an Oracle ace designation that you might enjoy, they might not realize that you enjoy. So it's basically that. So some general tips. Just start. Do something. Think about what you might think would be useful, and then do it. You can choose to start with things you know, as I was saying before. Maybe you're always helping someone out doing something. You can just write about that. Or you can start with what you don't know. Think about what you would like to see out there, and then research it, and then write about it. Because if you want to know about it, and you haven't really figured it out, or you see some kind of obscure posts about it from people who really are advanced and they assume everyone
thing in the world is a useful unless it starts with a good idea. So, look around for a need and start coming up with ideas to fill that need. One idea will lead to another, and before you know it, you've done it. Simply fill it.
That's it, Dad. I'll do it for you.
So yeah, see a need, fill a need. You know, find one. You probably don't have to look too hard to find it. So the tools that you need. What you need are attitude, time, and energy. And by attitude, we mean a good one. It's very easy to go to, say, Experts Exchange or an Oracle forum or anywhere where people are asking Oracle questions and say, well, you should read the manual. Well, okay, they probably should, and it's kind of annoying when people post basic questions without having Google search for it first. However, you could also post, oh, here it is in the manual. You might find this page helpful, and link to the page. That's definitely more helpful than to say, well, it's in the manual. Why don't you read the manual? Even though you may be feeling that, it's important to have a good attitude because you want to feel approachable. And if people don't think that you're approachable, they won't approach you. If they're like, oh yeah, that's the person that told me to go read the manual, and now I'm afraid to post anything on that list at all, because that person might come back to me and say, I have to read the manual again. And the manual's big. Where on OTN am I going to find it today? I don't know. Not everyone's good at putting the right search terms in. So if you can be helpful, great. And you don't have to answer every single question either. That's something that you can do is you can say, you know what, I don't really like this person's the attitude they have in the post. I feel like they want me to do their job for them. You don't have to answer it either. But you do need time and you do need energy. It's not something that is easy to do like a lot of volunteer work. It's not anything that is going to give you rewards beyond your possible dreams. And that's, again, why it's something that you have to want to do anyway. And you will be rewarded for it. But it has to kind of be stuff that you would do anyway. So these are more just like guidelines on how to guide you in the right direction to find something that you might end up really helping a lot of people out.
And note that beyond that, you don't see on this list that you have to be the in-depth expert on some particular thing.
As you point out, I think one of the hardest parts about getting started sometimes is starting and understanding that not everybody needs to hear it from the in-depth expert. If you've done something once and it was successful, sometimes that's all you need to be an example for someone else who hasn't done that once and doesn't have the experience that you had. I mean, I feel like you're a complete expert, but there are a lot of people here that need beginner level sessions and beginner level expertise and help in just getting started. So don't think that not being an expert disqualifies you from being up here and telling people about what you did and how it worked.
And I'm glad you brought that up because it actually reminded me of an example I think that I put somewhere in the notes of one of my very first blog posts was about this great feature that I think everyone should use. It's a certain column data type, like an enumerated list, and how it's great, data type, and you can use it for a lot of great things. And basically, I was wrong because it is a great data type and you use it for a lot of things. But whenever you want to add something to that enumerated list, you have to take the entire table offline while you change the enumerated list. Which, for millions, if you have like a users table and you have an enumerated list of status, right, where you have like paid, free, and admin, and then you want to add a new status, well now you have to have like a 10-minute downtime. So that was pointed out to me, and I was like, and I wrote it in the blog post, and I said, hey, I wrote about this great feature, and I didn't realize that it has this, and I made a follow-up post. So don't even be afraid to be wrong. That's the other thing. I mean, research, and you're putting your name out there. You saw in the beginning our links were www.dannorris.com and www.sheeri.com. I'm putting my name out there. Dan's putting his name out there. Our name is on the line. So yeah, you might think, well, I don't want to be wrong, but it's okay to be wrong. Research as much as you can. And honestly, if you research and you end up having misconceptions, then you even need to do that blog post even more because you need to get that out there. That obviously you didn't understand all the ramifications. So other people researching the same things you did wouldn't understand the ramifications. Anyway, so don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to be wrong because your colleagues will correct you, and hopefully they'll have good attitudes when they do it too. So you might be sitting there going, but what can I do? As I already said, you have knowledge. Okay, probably everybody in this room Probably the audio engineer who knows more about Oracle than I do. It's very possible. I do know how to go into SQL Plus and type some things, but I start looking at dates in the NLS lang date format, and I'm like, I just wanted to show the date. So you have some knowledge. The comment is the fact that I go to SQL Plus shows that I'm an Oracle geek. Yeah, actually, it's just because I'm not used to using GUIs because MySQL uses a lot of command line tools. So, but yeah, now I use Golden or something. So. Whatever you've done in your job, whether you've been there a week or 10 years, you face some challenges. How did you fix it? Maybe you fixed it by seeing something on the Oracle Technology Network that's a basic to do, but you can write a blog post about it. If it's something basic, it's probably something that half the people forget. And it's probably something that another newbie like yourself, or not a newbie like yourself, has to remember. You don't have to be, again, the expert, or you don't have to be coming up with like some new algorithm to solve a problem. Sometimes it's the simple things. Often it's the simple things. And you have resources at your disposal. Whether it's your company, you might be able to get some time from your company to blog because it looks good for them too. You have people you can talk to. You can talk to Dan, you can talk to me. I don't know how much help I'll be. But you have resources you can go to. There are user groups. There's all sorts of places to get information. And even if you just say, hey, I was doing some research and I saw this parameter. And I was looking and there's 4 different values for the parameter and I didn't know what they were and I researched them and so I'm just going to explain them. And you might think, well, why would anyone want to read that? Well, maybe they forgot about it. And they're not going to sit, nobody reads the encyclopedia, right? Nobody's going to sit and read, the manual cover to cover. So by just putting that out there in their awareness, it's a good thing.
Yeah, that reminds me, one of the things, response that I got when I started all the bases was, I think it's from Jared Still, he recounted a story where he had a problem and was really searching hard for a solution to the problem that was going on. And finally got something that was something referenced a forum posting, and the forum posting had the answer, or something that led to the answer. And you go, that was really great, that was very helpful. I wonder who posted that. It turns out Jared posted that about 3 years earlier, and has found his own post, which helped him solve the problem down the line. So sometimes you're not doing it for everyone else. Sometimes everyone else may be you after you've forgotten what you learned 3 years ago. So sometimes it's just a good record of what you learned. It'll help you better than it'll help anyone else. Sometimes the challenges are not technical too. I think there's all kinds of ways that people interact with Oracle. Not everyone is interacting in a deeply technical manner. Not every article you'll find online is a deeply technical article about something really in depth. As you mentioned, it could be just something as simple as, hey, I finally found this little piece of documentation, and I know it may not be that hard for some of you to find, but I'm going to just go ahead and kind of summarize it here and offer you a little corner of why I think it would be useful. Or sometimes the answers are open-ended, or the posts are open-ended, where there's not really as much of an answer as there is a call for surveys, or a call for, hey, can somebody put a comment on this blog post and tell me why, whatever you use the third value option for this particular parameter, why would you set it to 3 rather than 12? I don't understand why you would do that. There's opportunities for commenting as well. That's what you'll see later on. Mention that's another way to get involved. And you can also spend some time in just summarizing other people's presentations and documents and putting pointers to the rest of the world. I think that's a very helpful service. A lot of times, especially when there's a lot of activity, as there seems to be now, a lot of new bloggers showing up online, a lot of new Oracle blogs starting. Sometimes it's not easy to find them, or you aren't aware of them until someone that you are reading often comments on it or sends a link to the new site. And recording sessions as well is very helpful. Sheeri's recording this session right now, and it'll be posted on her blog sometime in the next couple of days, I'm sure. And there's helpful information that you can just regurgitate, or get agreement from someone before you record them. But it's very helpful. And a lot of people do like watching playbacks of sessions that they couldn't attend.
I think one of the more important things is promote Oracle appropriately, which you kind of talked about a little bit, but as a MySQL DBA, there's always the big like, Oracle is great at everything, and MySQL is the best at everything, and it's faster, and Oracle's better, more secure, and whatever. It's no one product is the best at everything, because if it was, we would use it, and then they would have a monopoly, and they would become evil, and we wouldn't want them to use it anymore. But there are good things about Oracle, and there are bad things about Oracle, and I see it all the time. I read my company does the log buffer, which kind of gets the news from all the different major database logging sites out there, and I'll read stuff. I'm really happy to see Oracle's really great at this, and I'm also happy to see you really can't do this one thing in Oracle, and so here's the workaround I've given. So you can talk about Oracle, you can criticize Oracle, right? There's some security patch, there's some security flaws in Oracle that have been there for years that and I've seen blog posts where when's Oracle going to get their act together? But that's great and all, but let's talk about how there's this problem, and while perhaps corporately your needs aren't being met, how are you meeting the needs without that? Okay, there isn't that patch in place, so what are you doing? Are you firewalling things? Are you trying to be more proactive in looking at your logs to make sure that you aren't getting exploited? What are you doing to do that? So there's constructive criticism is important. To just sit there and be a negative Nancy or whatever they call them these days, and just go, everything mistakes. That's not really helpful, and you're not even going to help others. Where if you could say, hey, I really wish that the corporate whatever would release a security patch for this, but here's what I've done to kind of help mitigate my circumstances. And the other thing that you'll find is that's one of those posts where you'll get tons of comments from people who say, that's great, I'm going to implement that tomorrow, or this is how I did it in my company, or you can add this to it there, and that will make it more secure. And one of the things that I love about blogging and about being a resource is that I learn a lot too, because people come to me and they say, you said to do it this way, or you said you do it this way, but I do it this way. And I'm like, wow, that's brilliant. I never thought about it that way. I want to do it that way. So you really get, it goes part of the joint discussions. You just really get into part of just a community. So again, if you're not very technical, you can share abstract knowledge. Maybe you're a manager. Maybe you can share tips on how to manage Oracle DBAs. How do you herd those cats? Can you talk about architecture? Do you have Oracle RAC? How do you deal with the disk being single point of failure? How do you design your schemas? Things like that. That's kind of technical, but you might not think of it because it's not like writing commands into a browser. How do you deal with multiple layers of tags? And if something have tons of tags and finding friends based on tags, how do you deal with that? Even abstractly, you can share that. You can start an online magazine or a user group, and you can be, an editor, or you can, solicit content from other people. Jen was talking about that earlier. So even if you have no Oracle knowledge, you can say, okay, well, I want to, start a magazine. I want to help people out, and you can do that. Again, starting a user group. You don't need to speak at user group presentations. But if your area doesn't have a user group, I started the Boston MySQL user group because I went onto meetup.com and I said, okay, I want to find a user group in Boston, because hey, Boston's technical, should have some MySQL people, which probably should be one already. There wasn't one, but there were 32 people that wanted one. And I said, this is stupid. There's 32 people who want one. Why don't we have one? And so I made one. And, we 2 years strong, actually. So, it doesn't take a lot of, you don't have to be you don't need superpowers to organize things. If that's the organization is your skill, if you're a product manager or project manager, maybe it's easier to do more organizational stuff, like starting a user group. Call up Oracle, call up some Oracle ACEs to give presentations. You don't have to do it yourself.
And starting users, as many of you know, in the Oracle world, there are a lot of great user groups already in existence, with a lot of great special interest groups that operate in them. And I guess it is a very first starting point. Before you might start a user group, you might be involved in some first, and certainly get involved with your local chapter or a larger group at the national level, or the IUG and ODTUG and OAUG are all great organizations that have a lot of great activities going on. Some of them are also local. There's also local user groups in a lot of areas, so I encourage you to just check out what's around. Before you starting a user group, as Sheeri mentioned, isn't the hardest thing you'll ever do in your life. But it's certainly harder than joining one that already has some infrastructure and some following going along with it, and participating and seeing how it operates, and maybe thinking of taking over or becoming more involved or volunteering for those groups.
Or just bringing cookies, you know.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily even have to be Oracle with a specific technology. Maybe it's a Windows user group or a Linux user group, or maybe it's a user group for startups, you know, trying to work out something. You know, you don't have to be completely specialized.
All the user groups that I'm involved in are really focused on helping people get something done or find answers, which goes along with our next set of topics here, just being helpful and generally being a helpful person and finding out that getting involved is a whole lot more beneficial to you than not getting involved. And there's a lot of times where I'll see questions on a forum or a mailing list, and I know the answer, and I know there's probably a dozen other people that also know the answer, but I'll contribute my answer just because it's not that hard to do, to put a blog post or a mailing list response or something like that together. It takes a couple minutes, and it might be helpful for somebody.
One tip that's also really helpful that I've found in dealing with people who maybe they have like a question or a blog post, or they're posting something and the information they have is just completely wrong. You know it's wrong. You know, they're talking about, you know, how come my query goes so slow, or I did everything right, you know, and you look at their table, there's no index on it or something. You know, and instead of, you know, a lot of the responses, you know, wow, you don't know basics, why don't you start putting an index on it or whatever, you know. One of the things I found is a better approach is to take it from their point of view. Assume that they do know something that maybe you don't, right? And so what I would say to that is, oh, I usually use an index when I'm trying to make my queries faster, but you don't have an index, and you said you did everything right. So, you know, why did you choose not to have an index there? You know, and that kind of gets them like, oh, I didn't realize. Whereas if you're like, oh, just put an index on it, silly. Sorry, need to wake you guys up. Just put an index on it, guys. You know, that's not as helpful. And occasionally you do find people who, you know, probably 19 times out of 20, they're wrong, and they're like, oh God, I'm such a dork, I can't believe I forgot that. And then one time out of 20, about 5% of the time, you get someone who's like, oh no, I didn't put an index on it on purpose because, you know, there was this other thing in place and we were like actually optimizing it because the text search was seen. I don't know. So you actually do, again, you learn. But in that 5%, when you really do have someone who knows what they're talking about, and you don't think they do, they get really upset if you sit there going, well, you don't know what you're talking about. And it helps people who are new feel good about themselves when you do treat them with expertise. So there's plenty of places where you can help. Customer advisory boards, doing technical editing of books that come out. So, you know, if we're writing something up with a book, or I don't know if one has no press. Press. You know, look at blog posts and with questions that are unanswered, or forum posts that people have an unanswered question. And maybe it's not even in your, you know, specialization, but it's unanswered, which means somebody doesn't know and they're having a problem. You can research that question.
Yeah, it's been characteristic. This is actually one of the ones that I remember coming straight out of one of the survey responses that when I surveyed the ACEs. It was to find a question that doesn't have an answer. I mean, don't contribute your answer to the 15 other answers that are already existing for one of the forum posts. Find the one that nobody answered, and you may not have really any idea what the answer is. But go spend some time, look it up, and find out who actually needs the help. Well, that was another Jared Still.
Jared Still. Don't choose only the questions from forums to which you know the answer. Look for questions that have little or no response and to which you don't know the answer. Dig in and learn, show your work, share it on the forum. Doing more research is likely to make the lesson stick for you too.
Yeah, I mean, most of us want to have more knowledge and learn new things. I know I can't go for very long without learning something new or doing something different, because I just get bored really quickly and easily. So I always happen to learn something new. And I'll do it on my own if I don't have anybody else directing me, but there's always a good stream of people who need help, and I don't know the answers, so I look it up and find the answer and post it. Again, it doesn't mean that you're an expert, and as we've mentioned several times, mistakes are okay. You could be a little bit wrong. Maybe you just draw the one guy out of the woodwork that just didn't feel like posting his answer even though he knew it, and he'll correct him. Great. How do you learn something from someone who doesn't know what to do?
As someone who's done years of volunteer work, I've found that it's a lot easier to get people to respond to something, especially when it's wrong. It's a lot easier to get people to respond and red pen something. I mean, we're talking even if you're writing like a fundraising letter, Nobody wants to write a fundraising letter, but you get like 2 paragraphs of whatever out there, and they'll gladly be like, oh, well, that doesn't really, say our position really accurately. You should say this instead. And there's a lot of times where I'm just like, okay, I'll write the first draft. And that's the same thing. Sometimes you need to just write the first draft.
Yep.
And people will comment on your post, or they will reply to your message on the list and say, actually, that's a simplistic view of it, but here it is more in detail. Because everybody wants to feel like they know something. So they're happy to respond.
I think one of the most frequently visited blog posts I've ever had was a fairly simple post of a process I followed to clone a VMware machine on an ESX server. There's like 30 comments, and at least 5 of them are people who are like, why didn't you just do it this way? There's 3 commands for your 12. Why wouldn't we just do this? You're like, great, do that. That sounds like a great idea. Where were you? Where's your blog post? This is awesome. Thank you for contributing. And we've got, there's several of those, and they're rolling in as late as last week on a blog post I made a year ago, which is really pretty impressive. So it's always good to put something out there and let somebody else help steer it into a more correct answer, which kind of gets to spend some time putting things together, publishing something in some way, shape, or form, whether it's on a blog, which is relatively easy and fast and painless. The hardest part with blogging for most people is getting started and getting used to doing it on a regular basis. And you'll find that there's a lot of us like me that will go dark for extended periods of time during preparation for Open World, say, or just in a period where I just didn't feel real talkative, and it just kind of gets out of the groove. And you get back into it, and before you know it, you're putting these couple things together every week.
And I think the important thing also to know is that when you're writing, make them. I think a lot of people are a little averse to writing because they don't want to give away. If they're a consultant, they don't want to give away free help. Well, if you're writing a 1-page, how-to, that's probably not giving. If somebody can learn the entire process by a 1-page how-to, you're probably not losing any business, and you're actually kind of generating a good feeling of like, okay, this person knows what they're doing, right? I follow their tutorials all the time. I read their blog, all the time, and they have really great points. I read their articles, and they really know what they're doing. Let me go hire them for this really big problem I have. Same thing with presentations. Okay, yeah, a day-long, training session, that's something that, people pay for. But, an hour-long presentation at a user group, it's probably not something that, is going to really take away a lot of business and really help people get to know who you are and how you are. A lot of consulting is really the relationship between the 2 parties. And this kind of starts, or keeps the relationship ongoing. I've gotten jobs before without having to take a technical interview that everyone else had to take because they're like, oh, we know you know your stuff. We've read your blogs. We've seen your presentations. We don't need to ask you these questions. You've already answered them in other tutorials you've done. So that's something else that you can, maybe take to your boss or whatever. You have to definitely be careful of your company's policies about blogging. Some companies do have policies that you can't blog or whatever. You might say, hey, I developed this great, PLSQL procedure. You have to make sure that your company's okay with letting that out. But in most cases, you can probably convince your boss or legal that it is okay because, hey, you did it in like an hour or a day. It's not something you didn't use company secrets to make it, and it's something that will help you in a year from now when you didn't remember that whole procedure. You're using it exactly like it for a different system. You can be like, oh man, I remember doing that, and then you go back to your blog post and it saves time later. So there are some considerations and some things to take into account because there are people who work at, if they work at a bank or whatnot, they might not be allowed to blog. Or I have a friend who's a lawyer, and she has to, she's getting warnings from her colleagues, not like her boss. Her colleagues are like, are you sure you only blog about that stuff? Or something. I'm just talking about political issues of the day. I'm not really, and how it relates to law. I'm not really talking about like cases on firms here. So you have to make sure that you're aware of the issues therein.
Some of these cases, political cases.
Yeah. And hopefully you can actually get some company time to do this. Most companies that I've worked at have something like, 10% of your time is for training, right? It's 5, 10%. Well, 10% of a 40-hour week is 4 hours. So if you spend half a day every week, who here spends half a day every week training themselves? Probably nobody. Maybe like an hour a week aggregate, because it's really like half a day per month or something. So So that's something that you can do. If it's in your job description that you need 10% training time, you could say, hey, well, I want to, learn stuff, and I want to make a presentation. And making a presentation is not just training me; it's training my coworkers. It's training other people. So that might be a way that you can kind of convince your boss to let you blog or let you create presentations, is by saying, it's in my job description, I have to do it.
As I mentioned before, the tutorial, like how I cloned a VMware machine, has been one of the most popular things that I've ever written about. And those kinds of things sometimes will branch themselves into bigger things. And you can consider maybe making something a little bit larger out of that into a class or a presentation at a user group event or a conference or something like that. And there's all kinds of other ways that you can broadcast your knowledge or to share with other people. And I think that Sheeri mentioned before, the times that I've learned the most is when I've been teaching something, which seems really ironic to me, but I find that I learned a lot more by listening to people's questions and seeing that they were actually standing on their head when they were looking at it, where I was standing straight up. And so we saw it in completely different aspects, but the way they saw it made me think of it in a whole different way. It helped me to be able to understand a different aspect of the same thing better, and then teach it in a different way, which ultimately helped both of us. Now I understand some new view on the same data that I was presenting before. And there's all kinds of different cast technologies. Sheeri's probably the expert on
Podcasts, video casts, screencasts, webcasts, whatever you want. Whether you just buy a $20 video audio recorder, and take it around to people and say, what's your one tip that you would give an Oracle DBA or an applications writer, against Oracle? Maybe it's some SQL optimization tip, or maybe it's never use Select Star. I don't know, whatever it is. Just things like that. You can really get there's 43,000 people at Oracle OpenWorld, and there's 320,000 customers. So probably there's at least a dozen or so people that are using Oracle that don't know what you have to say and want to hear it. I know I kind of have the idea that most of you are sitting here going, I really want to be an Oracle and help people, but I don't really know. I can't really help. So that's kind of why I'm kind of going back to that, because I really want to assure everyone that really there are people out there that are using Oracle that can benefit from your expertise. So yeah, sometimes it's even just a screencast. There's free software that will do screencasts. Speak at user groups. User groups are great because you're talking like there's 10 people in a room and you're just talking to them. And if the presentation's half an hour, great. If it's an hour and a half, great. Conferences are a little more difficult because you have to get in, you have to kind of have to write half a presentation ahead of time just for the proposal. And then, you have to sit in front of tons of people and talk, and you can only make it an hour, and you don't really want to go over, and you don't really want to go under. User groups are a lot easier to kind of deal with that.
Oracle, specifically OpenWorld, is getting a lot better at facilitating some of these things. And this week, I know the OTN group has facilitated some streaming quick videos out to different channels within the user group community or in the attendees here, and making those available online. And there's also a round of unconference rooms available for you to sign up for. So even if you aren't selected as a presenter or you aren't able to have an official session scheduled, you can go up to the third floor in Moscow West and get yourself an unconference session and talk about whatever you like. So the bigger question is, what would you do?
Next one's for you.
Our high school guidance counselor used to ask us what you would do if you had $1 million. You didn't have to work. And invariably, whatever you'd say, that was supposed to be your career. So if you wanted to fix old cars, then you're supposed to be an auto mechanic. So what did you do? I never had an answer.
So what would you do if you had $1 million? Now, I might not go back to my job tomorrow if I want $1 million. I'm already on this coast. I live on the East Coast, so I might hop down to Florida. Australia. Why did I say Florida? I might hop down to Australia for a month or so. Fly my husband out, spend some time, relax, and do nothing. Eventually, I would come back and I would want to work on stuff. I have there's a couple of open source projects I would dive right into if I wasn't working on my job. I just was carefree. But again, that's open source projects that I'd be helping develop some new software. I wouldn't be sitting on a beach for 3 years. I'd be developing new software. So what would you do if you had $1 million? You probably wouldn't go back to your job. Maybe you would. Maybe you would go back in a different capacity. But what would you do if it doesn't involve? If the answer to your question doesn't involve learning and teaching technologies, then you're probably going to hate trying to be an Oracle ace. You're probably going to hate trying to shove yourself in the solution so that you get the little spade next to you. But if you do like teaching technologies and learning technologies, then the Oracle ACE program is designed for you. It's designed to reward you. I think pretty much most people who are in technology are in it because they love it. Although never know how I do what I'm doing because it's not working out now. But yeah, it's don't make it be a burden. Do what you love. So the value of open source. So I work in open source, and it's very interesting hearing, Oracle's open. Well, they have an API that you can, use, and that is more open than not having it, right? I mean, look at the whole Facebook, MySpace thing. Facebook opened up their programming interface, and now anyone can make a Facebook application. It's not open. You can't look and delve deep into the code of Facebook, but now you can make an application that runs against it. So the reason I say this is, if you write, there's tons of posts where, somebody wrote a new store procedure and they put it out there. That's open source, right? Here's the code that I use to make this store procedure. Not just, I wrote this really neat store procedure, and I won't tell you what it does, but you could buy it from me. The value of it is that you really have a broad audience. Other people can find it, including yourself in your next job. So the work that you do, you don't have to redo. I know that I've had to do this in a couple of jobs before I realized the strength of hey, if I just blog about it and put it in my blog post, then I don't have to worry about it next time. Where I've come up with something, an idea or a procedure or some kind of, even if it's just a checklist procedure, not even a technical store procedure, or an architecture or something, you're sharing the ideas and whatnot, and other people can find it, and then you can also find it later. So we were talking about the Jared, he was like, this is great, and I found it before. I actually refer to my own posts a lot. A lot of times I get asked by clients. I work in a remote database management company, and so I actually am in charge of about 14 different clients. And a lot of times they'll ask me, a lot of them will ask me the same question, but it won't be the same question at the same time. Somebody will say, oh, well, what is this, what is that? And I'll point them to a blog post I did about it. So instead of having to sit there and waste my time and my company's time writing out another explanation, I just say, oh, that's a great question, and I actually think that this link will have a lot of information, and then I link them to my blog post. So it's actually really useful, and then I don't know if it impresses them at all that I've already not only have I already come up with their solution, or a colleague of mine has in their blog post. And certainly I'll go to even other, there are plenty of, at least in the MySQL world, I think in the Oracle world too, there's plenty of other consultants that have done blog posts about it. And if I will send them, I'll say, hey, this post over here on this competitor's website is really good and will explain everything you need. You do get some surprising results. Or we got some surprising results. Dan actually posted these questions. He posted, I think it was 3 questions, like, what did you do to become an ACE, and what are the benefits that you get out of the ACE program that aren't, listed on the website, and what advice would you give to people who want to be an Oracle ACE? And he gave people a deadline of 2 weeks, because he said it before he went away on vacation, so it was really easy that way. And basically every single result he got came within 2 days, which really says something about the people who are currently Oracle ACEs and Oracle ACE directors, is that, we all want to share. We want to share so much that we respond to this particular message within 2 days. It's that high priority. It's not something like, oh, I'll wait till the weekend and then I'll sit on it and I'll think about it. It was really a high priority for everybody who answered. And we didn't get people trickling in, oh, is it too late? It's a week after the deadline. That was actually really, really surprising. There were a lot of common answers, and there were also a lot of worries. There were people who were worried that people would kind of take advantage of the system and come to our presentation and become an Oracle ACE without actually having the real spirit. We've been sitting up here with the hidden crunchy, help people, be good to people. People like to be helped. And there was a lot of worry that, it's not quite that, I don't know, I'm kind of a Pollyanna, so I really do kind of like to help people, and I am kind of like that, but I'm also realistic. There was the common worry that people were just going to kind of get their Oracle ACE, kind of spend, 6 months doing something, get their designation for the year, and then just, keep that little spade next to their name and just, not really value the designation and just kind of get it to get it. So there was, we talked about kind of the hypocrisy of having this, even having practice workshop of like, you can't really like follow a list. It's not like a certification exam where if you study this and study that, then you can probably get a certification. It's a spirit thing. You have to want to help people, and you have to be able to do that. So hopefully you find your guru.
That was probably the least surprising thing that I heard out of the survey. I know we spent, I guess as I mentioned, we have a lot of networking opportunities within the EASE program. And so I've known a lot of these people already, and a lot of the others that I didn't know personally. I've been reading their blog sites, I've been watching posts on forums and things, so I knew about them, even if I didn't know them personally. And it was clear to me that when I said, well, what did you do to become an Oracle Ace, that the answer overwhelmingly would be, I didn't do anything. I just kind of kept on doing what I was doing anyhow, and somebody sent me a note one day and said, hey, congratulations, you're an Oracle Ace now. And I was like, oh, great, this is nice. I got this little credential I can hang around my neck, and that it's really going to help me. So that was very unsurprising, I guess, to me. But I thought it was very important for all of the folks who are here today to understand that this is really a state of mind, I think, as much as anything else. And so if you wanted to become or join this program, I think you can start by just changing your state of mind and do some of these things.
And note that Dan is an Oracle Ace director. And, he has some prestige being an Oracle Ace director. So why would he sit up here and say, I want to dilute my prestige by getting more and more Oracle Ace directors? The other thing I want to point out is that there's no quota. It's not like Oracle has to, assign this many Oracle Aces, this many Oracle Ace directors a year. So if you get it, it's because you deserve it. It's not that you were the top X out of that year. So there's no, Dan can sit here saying, I don't want anyone else to become an Oracle Ace director because I want the prestige to be all mine, and I don't want to share that with anyone. I want to get the benefits. But he's up here because he wants, and all the Oracle Aces that people that you talk to, or the Oracle Aces, who really wanted to help get more Oracle Aces. And you might think, well, with all these benefits, why would you want more? Well, we want more, not because of the benefits. We want more because we want more people to help other people out there. We want more people to share their knowledge, to share what they do and how they do it. So in summary, there's, just a couple of things. Be visible, so be out there. Put your thoughts out there. Even if you're not sure about them, qualify. I'm not sure, but here are my thoughts. What do you think? Start a discussion. That's a way to start discussions. Be generous. Be helpful with, generous with your time, generous with your effort. You can be generous with your money too if there's a project out there that needs money. But most of all, people really mostly need brain power, and you have some. Be constructive when you criticize or when you're trying to help people out. People, when they're writing stuff, they're not writing stuff to sound like a stupid newbie. I've never had that. I've certainly sounded like a stupid newbie plenty of times, and I've never had that intention. So I really appreciate it when, people say, oh yeah, no, that's a pretty common question. It should probably be addressed somewhere really, big red flashing letters, because it is a common thing. That's supposed to, everyone asks that. I can't believe it. Why don't you look at the archives?
I think all of these are equally important, and being open-minded is also very important. I think I've learned an awful lot about different people and how they operate in different parts of the world and different countries and different cultures that behave differently and interact differently, converse in different tones and use words differently than I do. It's sometimes important to remember that the written word is very difficult to interpret as a spoken word. So you may read something and think, well, that's an awful mean thing to say, whereas there was no mean intention at all. It's just that you read it on a bad day, or you're having a rough morning. So, I've always tried to make sure that I give everyone the benefit of the doubt and reading everything as though it was meant in the best way possible and responding accordingly.
It also speaks towards being open-minded. Speaks towards, what I was saying before, like kind of assume that they know what they're talking about. Because you're being open-minded, like, okay, let me just like pretend, even though they're completely wrong, because they're saying always put large, like 3 megabyte images into databases. Well, guess what? Technology changes, and now you can put images into databases. 5 years ago, right? Everyone knew you never put images into the database. And Oracle 10G came out, and Oracle even has a little, article about, okay, the technology's gotten better, things are faster, bandwidth is more. You can put images in the database. You may still decide not to. But the reason of they're too big and it makes things slow is not the reason anymore.
Yep. And I think just to finalize everything, the most important things about, well, what are you really going to do? It's a state of mind, as I mentioned. So it's something you're going to have to kind of get used to over time, and some things that you might think about doing this week if you're interested in this. If you want to learn more about the ACE program, or even if you don't, a good way to get started is just to hang around the OTN Lounge. There's smart guys and gals hanging around there all the time. And in fact, this week the ACEs are even holding office hours there. So stop by and talk with them about the program, about what they know, or share some of your knowledge, or say, you know, I read your blog post and I think maybe you should have added this other piece that you forgot, or are you sure that this is the way it works? Because I saw something differently. As Sheeri mentioned, you approach it in a very open-minded way that maybe you have a way to make that post a little better. And it's absolutely, totally allowed to refer to someone else's blog post and say, well, I read this and then I did this other piece around it and added to it, and now I think my solution's a little bit better, or a little bit more complete than what was written originally. Those are great ways to get started. The unconference I mentioned before is a great way to go get started with bringing a group of people together and tell them about what you know and getting some of their feedback. The unconference format is very open and not something that you have to prepare an hour-long session and slot through a PowerPoint slide deck. It's much more open. We're going to be representing this session at the unconference in a slightly different format, a little more interactive format possibly, getting some feedback from the people who are in the ACE program as they're there. That's going to be Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And then I think probably most importantly, talk to anyone about anything and publish the results, or put it on the Twitter or on a blog site or something. But getting started and taking that first step is usually the hardest part. Once you're immersed in it, it's not the end of the world to keep it up.
Are there any questions, suggestions? Yes.
So I knew I want to be generous, I want to be open-minded. I don't have dedicated posts, I don't know how to start a blog, I don't know where to go or do this, everything. How do I start?
So the question is, how do I start when I have the energy, I have the time, I have the attitude, I have everything? How do I get a blog? How do I do that? There's plenty of free. Oh yeah, no, I don't need to answer the question. Blogspot. What did you say? Blogspot.com. So Blogspot is owned by Google, and you can have, I'm the best Oracle DBA.blogspot.com. It's free, and there you go. You get comments, and you get automatic, there's a CAPTCHA, so there's no spam for the comments.
I think the name's taken though, so, or it will be in just a minute.
Exactly. So yeah, there's also, if you Google search for a free blogging website, I'm sure you'll find plenty of things. If you have, your company might have a blog. You might want to think ahead of time, though, about if your company has a blog, do they own the information? Do you own the information? If you decide, hey, I want to write a book in the future, you want to make sure that you actually are allowed to use the example that you wrote 3 years ago at your company. Any other questions? Ustream.tv, USTREAM.tv, has free streaming video services. So if you have a program on your computer that can do it, they will stream the video for free. I've actually done this to make user group presentations a little more accessible to people who are not geographically in the same area. So that's a free service. And I think that's what else. There's, thank you.